I'm Glenn McGuinness, and this is Outburst. This week, should voting be mandatory in Canada?
Yes, voting should be mandatory for everybody in Canada.
It's your right to choose to or not to.
I don't think we should have mandatory voting.
I've always considered it mandatory personally.
But first, the ever-changing story of COVID-19 continues in this country, with case counts on the rise in provinces like Nova Scotia, who've had relatively low numbers since this pandemic began. Case numbers are also a concern in provinces like Alberta and Manitoba. But we've also seen numbers go down in provinces like Ontario and Quebec, who have bore the brunt of the high COVID numbers since early on in the pandemic. So, as more people get their shots, do you think we have a shot at dodging another wave? Our question.
Will Canada avoid a fourth wave of COVID-19?
That's a really hard question to answer. I didn't really expect a third wave, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a fourth wave, but I think things are kind of unpredictable.
And how about yourself? What do you think?
I think we kind of didn't really see the break in between the second and third, so it's kind of hard to tell what to identify as the fourth. We're definitely tired of all the restriction and not seeing anyone, not seeing family, since we're not originally from here. So I think going back to a little bit of like the bubble would be nice. If everyone was about to respect those rules, I guess we could stay away from that fourth wave, and if the vaccination process was going fast enough, probably.
I certainly hope so. I mean, I think people are getting pretty fatigued at this point and starting to get a little lax. But we don't really have much of a choice. You know, we have to get through it somehow, so can only hope.
I'm really hopeful that they will. I hope there's preventive measures and that things are put in place before it gets to that fourth wave.
Yeah, actually, I don't think so, because the vaccination is now out, and I think I heard that like people are getting it really fast. So yeah, I don't think there's a fourth wave.
I really hope so. I think that if everyone does their part, that we can. So yes.
And we're definitely doing our part, right?
Yeah.
I hope it does, obviously, but I'm not too sure whether or not it'll completely avoid like a fourth spike in a sense. I know that they're kind of like changing restrictions every now and then, so maybe it'll go up and down. But I hope it avoids a fourth spike, although I'm not too certain.
I sure hope so. If everybody gets their first shot, it should be a good opportunity to avoid a fourth wave.
Oh my goodness, I hope so, but I don't know. Yes, because we're all going to be vaccinated, right?
I feel pretty good about the Maritimes and how it's been handled on the whole. For the rest of the country, different ideologies and policies, it's hard to determine, I think. But yeah, we're not so densely populated, and I think our officials have done the best they could. I'm not an expert, so it's really tough to predict for sure. But yeah.
I hope so. I hope it's almost over. I mean, it seems like the vaccines are coming, so keep them coming, I say, and hopefully we'll avoid the fourth wave from happening.
Canada probably will be able to avoid a fourth wave of COVID if we're smart about it. We keep wearing masks. People aren't stubborn about wearing masks. We social distance.
I hope so. I don't know, but I hope so. If everybody gets vaccinated and do all their social distancing, practice proper hand washing techniques, sanitizing, I would hope that we can avoid a fourth one.
Probably not. It's, probably inevitable that we're going to go through it. But it's up to all of us as individuals, I think, as to how bad it's going to be. How much impact it will have and how fast we can get out of it.
At our current vaccination levels, I don't think so. But I don't know. It could go either way, right? But I don't think we'll avoid one.
I don't think so. People don't listen to the rules, or don't follow the rules, I should say.
This summer, I hope so. I think that if we stay diligent and keep on abiding by our guidelines, I think we're on our way, because it seems like the new variants haven't been that big of a deal.
Will it completely avoid? I think it's prepared to handle it. I don't think it completely avoided.
I hope so. I think if we get enough people immunized in the next 2 or 3, 2 months, then I think we'll escape a fourth wave, as long as the variants don't
don't come back. If the new variants are not conducive to the vaccines we've got, then we're in a real mess. But as long as the vaccines are good with the variants, I think we'll be fine. I don't think we will. I think the vaccines are getting out now, and I think as long as we keep vaccinating and people take the vaccine, I think we'll be good.
I don't know. I don't think we're in the space right now to even say whether we will or won't, I guess. But I think we're in our third wave right now, aren't we? So I don't know. It kind of it's like a hit or miss. But I just don't think that it'll be something that we can avoid.
Oh gosh, I'm concerned that it won't. I still see too many people not respecting social distancing rules, mask rules. Young people seem to be more careless than older people. There's a, I think it's the old 80-20 rule. There's 80% of the people who in Canada seem to be respecting all the rules, and another 20% who just ruin it for everybody. And the other thing I think is happening is that on vaccinations, is that there are people who say, they take this stance about, oh, I'm an anti-vaxxer, or I don't think they work. So the truth is, they're chicken. They just don't like getting needles. I think that's the truth.
Vaccines have been available in this country for some time now, and even though the federal government has been criticized about what's being perceived as a slow rollout, as more vaccines come into Canada, it may be giving more people some hope. The Prime Minister has assured all Canadians that any vaccine approved by Health Canada is both safe and effective. Some people may say their decision to get a vaccine could depend on which vaccine they're offered. The AstraZeneca, for example, has been associated with blood clots and could make some people cautious. So, if the chances of side effects are low, but not zero, should you be concerned? Our question.
Are you worried about the potential side effects of the vaccines?
No, not really. I mean, any new medication or vaccine or anything like that is going to have possible concerns. And I think the risk of that is far less than the potential outcome of not getting vaccinated at all. So I'm not particularly concerned by that.
Not really. We are healthy. I think there's always a chance, like a very tiny chance that something could happen to us. And obviously it's never fun when you are that person affected by it. But I think compared to other vaccines and any other health condition you could get, it's a risk I'm ready to take, considering I'm in a good health today.
I don't really watch the news very much because there's a lot of negativity. There's nothing really positive, and there's a lot of fear-mongering. And I think the real disease, not saying coronavirus isn't a disease, is fear. I think fear is really what's killing people because it's stopping people from being loving, caring, kind, and helping the most vulnerable in their communities, homeless, people who are really suffering and struggling right now.
Somehow worried because I don't have too much knowledge about the exact side effect to, especially to older people. Yeah, but I think the benefit of having vaccine outweighs the side effect at this point because less people will get the virus.
You know what? Obviously, you want to do your research and make sure that you make a decision that feels right. But I think that I think the world's doing a great job. We all need to get vaccinated.
Absolutely. Now, Lola, you're waiting for your vaccine, obviously.
Yes.
So, are you concerned about any of the side effects that you might have heard in the news about various vaccines?
No, I don't think so. I think that if they're giving it out to everyone, then it's for the good, and there's definitely more pros than cons. So
we're healthy, and so I don't think at our age group we're worried too much about it. So yeah, I'm ready to take the vaccine when it's available.
I mean, there are a lot of reports of side effects because people obviously focus on that. But I think the risk of it's quite low. At least I'd like to believe it's quite low, and the cases are quite few and far in between. So I'm not too worried about that just yet.
I'm not really worried about it too much. I know that there's one that causes the blood clot in very rare chances, but statistically it's probably worth the chance. If that's the only one available, probably worth taking that chance.
I think I would go with the provinces that have said enough with the AstraZeneca. Pfizer, on the other hand, has absolutely no single case, whereas there is a chance. So when you go to get a vaccination, you don't like taking a chance.
No, I'm actually scheduled to get a Pfizer vaccine on Friday. I'm super excited. So no concerns on my end. Yeah, I've obviously read some of the stuff around AstraZeneca. If you had underlying health issues, I could see why maybe someone would have some reservations if you weren't in a healthy state. But overall, no, I'm confident the vaccines will work as they're supposed to.
Not when compared to the side effects of COVID. And even when I hear some people talk about side effects of the vaccine, I have a higher side effect taking other drugs, like doing other things. I have a higher risk driving my car in the morning. Okay. So, no, I'm not.
I mean, it's a concern, but it's not enough of a concern that I would forego getting it. In the same way that I got all of my kids, all of the shots that were recommended by our doctors, I will get this shot, and my kids will get this shot when it's available to them.
Personally, I'm not, but I know close people in my family, they're not necessarily anti-vax before they had to get a vaccine, but now they have a lot of anxiety. So yeah.
Somewhat. The AstraZeneca specifically.
No, I'm not. I trust the science.
Okay, I had my vaccine 2 weeks ago. I had the Pfizer shot, first dose. Side effects, there were a little bit, but it was basically like getting the flu shot, so no, I'm not too worried about it. I felt run down for a day. I can handle that for the benefits. Not worried about major side effects.
No.
Yeah, no.
I'm not worried about the side effects of the vaccines. I have a pretty good faith that they've done their testing and they know what they're giving to us, so I'm not really worried about that.
I am worried because it's actually affected me and my family personally. I know somebody who's critically ill and in the hospital due to vaccine right now.
Yes and no. I understand that you may be able to get sick from vaccines. There may be side effects, but I think there's way more benefits than there are worries about taking the vaccine.
No, I believe the side effects of actually getting the virus would be a lot worse than the side effects of any vaccine, so definitely safer to get the vaccine than it is to get the virus.
Roughly how much of the world's maple syrup does Canada produce? Is it 65%, 75%, or 90%? The answer, 75%. According to the Federal Department of Agriculture and Agri-Food, as of 2019, the Canadian maple syrup industry accounts for approximately 75% of maple syrup production worldwide. The U.S. is the world's second largest producer at 24%. In Canada, Quebec leads the way in production with 91%, followed by 4% in both Ontario and New Brunswick, and 1% in Nova Scotia. In 2019, $430 million in Canadian maple products were exported to 68 countries around the world. But with the onset of the pandemic in 2020, just as the maple syrup season was starting, this industry, like many others, took a hit, and the full impact of this still remains to be seen.
Many say this third wave of COVID-19 is more severe than the previous two, with hospitalizations and critical care admissions still reaching the breaking point. Many of us hope the vaccines will be helpful, but Canada still lags behind many of the wealthier countries in the world in vaccine distribution. We took to the streets to ask Canadians if the government has been getting it right, as numbers continue to spike in different parts of the country. Our question:
what do you think of the federal government's handling of the third wave?
I don't envy their position. That's a tough job. It's something that they weren't prepared for, and that's the problem. I think is they should have been prepared for this. Epidemiologists and doctors and researchers have been screaming from the mountaintops for years that we need to be ready for this sort of inevitable event, and we weren't. And now it's just catch up. They're playing catch up constantly. I think we're certainly doing better than some places in the world, but I don't think we're doing all that we could. There could be more support. There could be clearer and more consistent management of what we're all expected to do and how things should be handled. So unfortunately, they're caught with their pants down on it, and they're doing okay, I guess. But I'd like to see a little bit more being done.
I think it's good, 100%. I mean, we're all struggling to want to see our families. I have nieces and nephews that have just been born I'd love to see, but I can't keep them protected if everything is open and everyone can travel freely. So I think they're doing a pretty great job.
I think one of the problems is that every province is doing its own thing. And the federal government has had trouble stopping that. So I think the feds are actually doing well. Some of the provinces are doing less well.
So far, I believe they're doing a good job. The rollout has been fairly successful, and they've been getting doses out as they come into every province, which is very encouraging, and I'd like to continue to see progress in that regard.
It's such a tough question. I'm not sure any government, would have done necessarily better or worse. It's a tough situation to be dealt with. There's some things that maybe I would have done differently myself, but to say that another government would have done everything right, I don't think it's an easy situation.
Yeah, man, it's a pandemic. it's what can legislator, you can't legislate what's going to happen. Yeah, I think the maritime bubble, shutting down was the right call and trying to restrict people's travel. But, I wouldn't want to be a public official during one of these things. I appreciate that they have a really tough job, and it is what it is, I guess.
I feel like it's going pretty good here in New Brunswick. I will say that I'm worried about it getting worse, but I think that people are abiding by most of the guidelines.
I think they've done as well as they can do. It's unknown to everyone, even to them. So they're doing what they need to do.
I think that the federal government is doing what they can. I think that it's a really difficult situation, and no one was expecting the variant to be as strong and as deadly as it is.
Well, which aspect of it? Because basically we've got two or three things going on all at the same time. One is that they're trying to enforce some of the guidelines, and by having fines and things like that. And I think they have to do that because not everybody is even going to be wise in terms of deciding what they should be doing for themselves, not to mention looking after other people. But at the same time, we have that going on. We have vaccinations growing all the time in terms of the number of people are getting vaccinated. And if at all possible, in somewhere in the summer, by July or August, that we can have second shots for people like myself, who I'm starting my 80th year on this planet, and that would be a real good accomplishment because hopefully there's not a variant out there that can sidestep everything that we're doing. And we're doing things so fast technically. I mean, the medical community is really, they've just made incredible strides. Who ever heard of having a vaccine ready in the length of time that they've had?
What I hear is that the issues are mostly from the provinces and more local populations not following the rules. Countrywide, I think they're doing what they should do, the federal government, and it's up to the provincial and the local governments to be more, keep up with what's going on. So federally, I think so, and locally, they need to step it up.
Hundreds of thousands of people a day passing through Pearson. Yeah, when you can't put your foot down on that kind of stuff, you're not going to control it.
It's more lackluster compared to earlier waves. I feel like it's been worse, and the amount of support by the federal government hasn't been there compared to prior waves. They should do more, and I feel like they're not.
Honestly, it's felt like it's been the British Columbia government that we've been dealing. The provincial government has more been the immediate government that we've been dealing with that I felt. We get all of our directives from Bonnie Henry. We don't really get it from Monsieur Trudeau. So other than the vaccine rollout, which some people complain about, but I imagine there's complex, geopolitics involved.
It's tough. I don't really blame anyone, and that includes the government. I think definitely it's something that we're all new to, and some decisions are made spontaneous or in the best interest of the people of Canada. And then when we reflect on some of those decisions, yeah, maybe in hindsight they could be different, but you know, I don't blame them because it's really hard to make those decisions at that time. So I definitely have trust in the government. I have trust that we'll get through this soon.
It's tricky. I mean, it's between the provincial responses and the federal responses and trying to just get, you know, millions of people to all pull in the same direction. I think they're doing okay. I think they've lost the momentum we had, but I think that's just as much as fault of just the fatigue that people have with trying to stick with regulations.
What effectively could they do besides maybe being more proactive on the vaccination? Like, you can't force people in this country to do too much if you reflect on other countries. So it's a very difficult situation for them. I wouldn't be blaming a situation on the government for now.
I'm not impressed. I don't sit down and really think about it in too much great detail or anything like that because it's more or less it's out of my control. I'm just doing what we're expected to do to follow the rules and get through this.
At a recent event in British Columbia, federal Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole told an audience he is studying Australia's mandatory voting law to figure out whether or not we here in Canada should follow suit. Australia is one of the few countries in the world that practices mandatory voting and can issue fines to people who don't comply. But here in Canada, would mandatory voting be an excellent tool to help increase voter turnout, or would it be an infringement on your rights and freedoms? Our question.
Should voting be mandatory in Canada?
Yes, voting should be mandatory for everybody in Canada. That would ensure adequate participation in our democracy. It's a citizen responsibility to go vote.
I don't think it should be mandatory. I think that we should encourage it as much as possible, but can't force anybody to do it.
Yes, I think that if it's not going to be mandatory, there should be more incentives maybe to vote. I think that the voter turnout, especially for municipal elections, is really low. We just had one here. The voter turnout's not high enough, so it would be nice to see some sort of incentive if it's not exactly mandatory.
No, I don't think voting should be mandatory in Canada. It's your democratic right if you choose to do it, but if you choose not to, that's also within your prerogative.
Mandatory? No. I think everybody should have the right to abstain from voting if they'd like. But I'd like to see it encouraged more, specifically at the municipal elections and provincial, because for a lot of political advocacy groups, that's a big step forward, and that's where fights need to be fought. And I don't think there's a big enough push to get people out voting.
Yes, I believe so, because people fought for the right for us to vote, so we should respect that.
No.
Yeah, no.
Everybody should have the right to choose if they want to vote. I think, there could definitely be more education surrounding why it's a good idea to vote, because you're having your voice represented by the people that you elect, right? So I think that there could certainly be more education surrounding why you should vote.
Before I would say that we should force everybody who qualifies, I would say let's lower the voting age. 18, maybe even 16.
It would help give the governments a bit of a better mandate, security in their mandate, what to do. But should it be obligatory? I would say no.
That's an interesting question. That's something I have never really thought of. I've always considered it mandatory personally. I've voted in every election since I became the age majority, and I plan on voting in every one, going forward. As to whether it should be mandatory or not, I don't know. It would be an interesting experiment to make it mandatory for a bit. I'd be interested to see what happens.
I don't think it should be mandatory because I do agree that is something that people have the choice to do or not, but I personally believe everybody should vote anyways, but I don't think it should be forced upon people, no.
I read something about, was it Australia that has mandatory voting, I believe? Anyway, it's an interesting concept. I'm just not sure if the results from that would really make a difference. I mean, there are a large proportion of the population who don't really follow news. They don't really know what's going on around them. All they know is what they read on Facebook, which, as we all know, tends to be a load of crap. And so I'm not sure that mandatory voting rules would really help democracy. I think what democracy really needs is a stronger journalism.
They should have freedom to vote for sure, but they also, I think, they also should have freedom to decide if they don't want to vote. I think that's also a freedom for individuals.
So starting with your voting question, I also don't think you should make it mandatory. It's still a democracy, and if people don't feel like expressing themselves, it might be a message in itself. So forcing people to choose between a certain option might not be the right way to do it. So I still believe that not expressing yourself is a freedom of speech as well.
Well, it's your right to choose to or not to. I don't think that mandatory is acceptable now.
Not voting is also a choice, and I think some people are just, that's a. I don't want to get involved. I don't feel compelled to vote. I feel that all these options are not really options. I think that's what a lot of people feel sometimes, and not voting is in a way to express your displeasure with kind of not a whole lot of alternative.
I don't think you can ever make voting mandatory. I think you can definitely encourage, and I think we can put funds into educating and encouraging people to vote because it is important. But I think people also have the freedom to not vote, right? Sometimes there's two parties or people that you don't believe in, so you don't want to cast your vote. So I don't think it should be mandatory, but we should highly encourage it.
I'd like to think it would be. On the one hand, making something mandatory, not voting is a choice. That is a vote. So I don't think that it should be. Yeah, I'd like to think that it should be, but I think that in itself is problematic.
Thanks for watching this episode of Outburst on the Cable Public Affairs channel. I'm Glenn McGuinness. If you have any comments about this show or any other show, you can find us on social media. You can also find us on our website at www.cpac.ca. It's your turn to speak up, and we're listening.